Hi, my name is Rochelle with WG Title, and today we're going to be talking about solar panels. Whether solar panels are a good idea or a bad idea for your house, I can't answer that for you, but what I can answer is when you go to buy a property that has solar panels already on there, or if you decided to get solar panels and then want to sell your property in the future, what does that mean for us from a title aspect, and what do we need to do to take care of that transfer? So what do we do when we see solar panels on title? And when I mean on title, usually it's a UCC financing statement that gets added into the county's records from the company that you receive the solar panels from. They'll file the UCC of record, and that's what we find. And that's what shows us, okay, there's solar panels been added to the property. And when there's a UCC financing statement, that tends to mean that you're getting it through a loan, you're paying monthly on them, or maybe you were able to get a contract with them to pay it at the end when you go to sell the property. Sometimes they allow that, but usually it's a monthly program that you pay toward the solar panels until it's paid off in full. What we need when we see that is, of course, whether or not we are going to release the UCC financing statement completely, which means that you're going to pay it off in full at closing, or if you have a buyer that is willing to take over the monthly payments rather than increasing the purchase price to buy the solar panels and pay that off, or they can pay those monthly payments and take them from you by just simply canceling the current contract that you have as the seller in place, and the solar panel company will then transfer a new contract over to the buyer. And in that point, they'll release the UCC financing statement that we find of record, and it'll then allow the company to then create another UCC financing statement under the buyer's name rather than it being under your name continuously. And that's how we will clear that issue as far as when we see solar panels. That's most of the time the case where people will transfer it, but I have seen a lot of cases where the seller will just say, hey, we're going to increase the purchase price. Buyer will accept that agreement to just basically purchase them outright rather than monthly payments, because maybe they don't want to take on the monthly payments. They've already got their mortgage that they're thinking about. So, but can they wrap that into their mortgage instead of having a separate monthly payment on the side? And those are just some things as a buyer to consider when looking at a property that has solar panels. Of course, depending on the solar panel company that you did choose to work with when you got the solar panels to begin with, it is going to determine whether or not you can transfer that contract to the buyer, because not all of them are the same, of course. So you can reach out to them, see what those options are if you did decide to sell in the future. But I would always suggest, if you are planning on selling, and this actually came up on a transaction I'm working on currently, where before the contract was even written out, the seller went and contacted the company, the solar panel company, to see if this is something they would be able to transfer the contract to the buyer for, and they actually said no. So it does depend on that company as well, but those are the two scenarios that I do see most often, is whether transferring the contract or just selling it outright at closing. And it is a payoff on the closing statement is how it shows up. Now, if you are considering in transferring the contract to the buyers, because let's say the solar panel company does allow it, and you chose, hey, we're not going to pay this off, the buyer's willing to take on those monthly payments. For us as a title aspect, it just looks like an additional payoff if we're just going to clear it on title rather than release it and transfer it to the buyer. If we are going to transfer the contract to the buyer, then we do have to get in touch with the solar panel company. And rather than just getting a final payoff, it's going to be a little extra process now. Instead of a payoff, we actually have to get them to release the UCC financing statement, which is sometimes a little bit more difficult, not usually, but it can take a little bit longer of a time frame to get that released and the new contract drawn up for the buyer than just getting a simple payoff. But of course, whatever works best for you, whether it's paying it off or the buyer accepts that new contract to be under their name and take on those monthly payments, it's just whatever you guys decide to do, we can still handle it either way. If you do own a property and you are looking to get solar panels, just keep in mind as a title company, those are the things that we're looking into, is whether or not we can transfer the contract or do we need to pay it off in full. And if you are planning on potentially selling this property in the future, whether it's the near future or 5, 10 years from now, it is something still that you want to consider when creating that contract with that company. Just see what your options are, since this is something as a title company that we're going to have to do regardless. So just check with them, make sure that is exactly, if you do plan on maybe transferring it to the buyer, or if you're okay with just paying it off in full, just touch base on those points with that company that you're looking at getting the solar panels from. If you did like this video, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you do happen to want to reach out and ask any specific questions, maybe about this topic or any others, our contact information will be below.